Welcome to Broadcast to Badass by Best Life Ever with your host, Kimi and Pua. If you're ready to stop struggling, stop hustling, and start living your best life ever, you are in the right place.
Today we have a super fun interview for you guys. Originally a neuroscientist focused on brain-computer interface and the evolution of human cognition, his work is actually now on display at the Smithsonian. Malcolm Collins felt he could learn more about the way humans interact with the world and each other by pursuing an MBA at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. There, he met Simone, his wife and co-author of their book, The Pragmatist's Guide to Life. They're going to share all about their story with you. So without further ado, let's welcome Simone and Malcolm Collins.
And we are so excited to be here today. What a joy.
Oh my goodness. Well, we were chatting a little bit before, and we were just starting to share how our brains hurt from reading your amazing book. But that The Pragmatist Guide to Life, it's definitely not a light read. And I swear two things kept coming to my mind when I was reading it. And one was the show Rick and Morty. Right? And then the other was, have you seen the show The Good Place?
Yes.
Oh
yes.
My gosh. And so that is sort of just the way that just, dissecting what you believe and really diving into what has intrinsic value to you and all these ethical quandaries. And I started reading it like, okay, let's just get ready for this podcast interview. And then it was like, what have I got myself into? So
it sucks you in
does.
The most awesome, weirdest, craziest way. It feels like you're in some sort of alternate reality. You actually are. It puts you in an alternate reality in your own mind because you're like, everything I've believed is not real.
Yes.
You guys are toasting my heart like a warm toasty on a Sunday. I you couldn't say nicer things. And I love how much it fits with, you guys teach this course, right? And you're saying the only thing we can't do with this course is tell you what you should be striving for in this course, tell you what you should come to this course wanting. And I was like, oh, that's what we do.
Love that.
Awesome. So aligned.
So as soon as you're done with the book, go take their course.
Yes.
Yes, I love it. We actually would just love, I was telling Kimi, I'm like, I just want to hear these two just talk because I just want to see what their brains will unfold before our eyes. So if you guys could just share a little bit about yourselves and, who you are and what brought you to creating this undescribable book of amazingness, please go for it.
Well, it all started almost 6 years exactly ago.
Oh God, I love you
in
guys.
San Francisco when I went on my first date with Malcolm James Collins. I turned 24 years old, and that year I decided in 2012, okay, I've never dated before. I just couldn't be bothered, and I'm terrified of people. So, and now that I have a job, life insurance, health insurance, emergency fund, savings, I go on my vacations, I have my friends and parties, everything else is perfect. I now need to experience love and then live alone forever. So I made a goal to have to fall in love and have my heart broken all in 1 year.
So she wouldn't be this 80-year-old lady when people are like, oh, you never dated anyone? That's so sad. It's like, no, I tried it. It was underwhelming.
Exactly.
Okay, continue.
So I created this whole system to goad myself into dating because dating is terrifying.
Oh, she had a points-based system of what she had to do as guys on a weekly basis and contrasted it with other people who were doing a similar thing and another points-based system for dumping guys.
Yes,
like
a
people
50...
run the marathon, right? They just run it to prove to everybody that they know that it sucks and they'll never do it again.
Well, and it's also useful. I mean, a lot of people live their lives for love or hold it as the thing of greatest value that they want to optimize in the world or amongst themselves or their family. So I think it's a good thing to understand from a firsthand perspective, though I found, I imagine the hard way also that love is a lot like alcoholism, addiction to cocaine. I mean, it's dangerous and it does skew your perception of reality. At any rate, though, so I met Malcolm on my 17th first date. He scored a 42 out of 50, whereas before the average score that my first dates got was a 16, which is not worth a second date. And he sat me down across from him over Indian food in San Francisco. And he basically said, well, I'm not really looking to date right now. I'm looking for a wife, and I'm going to find her this fall at Stanford.
Well, because there's such a large pre-vetted pool of candidates there, right? You know, they've already gone through a vetting system, and so I know that they're probably of high enough quality.
Right. And so I sat across from him. First, I was just stunned by like the first male I'd come across in this journey. And I mean, after I went on, 16 dates before him. That was in-person dates, but I've met, many people and spoke with many people online before that. No one was that honest with me ever. And I found that fascinating. And I also found it extremely convenient that this person I was immediately falling head over heels for had no intention of staying with me. And I was like, the plan. Yes.
She made me sign this contract. She's like, okay, I will sleep with you, but you have to promise to break up with me in 2 months.
I was sure that I would imprint on him like a duckling. I'd not had sex before. I mean, I'd only kissed one person before him, and I was like, and I kind of did imprint on him like a duckling. So it was kind of good that I had that forced breakup date. But the whole plan was,
and she wrote all these letters to herself in the future that she'd keep getting in the mail for years after we were dating, saying, you better have broken up with Malcolm.
Yeah, because I knew I was addicted. It was very disturbing, falling in love and slowly losing my mind and knowing it. It was like, anyone, I guess, who's fallen in love
But that
knows.
first date, that first conversation was all about what's your purpose?
Exactly,
what do you want?
Exactly. And that's where all of this, the book was born on that first date.
Right. And it's a conversation I had with so many people, but I'd never seen anybody really take the time to challenge. She gave me the generic, I want to help people. And I was like, okay, define help. Are you trying to maximize their emotions? Are you trying to maximize their freedom? Are you trying to maximize some form of equality for them? And it's like, well, I want to maximize their emotions. I want them to be happy. Well, suppose you could put them all in pods and you could press a button and you could do that and it would maximize their emotional state for the rest of their life, but they wouldn't have any freedom. Would you do that? And she's like, well, no, I don't really feel comfortable with that. It's like, well, let's define perfect, define what you want from the world so that you can develop a life around how to achieve that. And that's where the book really started.
Yes.
Wow. I'm scared because I'm falling in love with you guys.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Okay. So you started to kind of share, it sounds like on that first date, some of these, what you call these thought experiments. And I think that is really what is such a mind fuck in the book, if you will, is these ideas of thought experimentations as a way to determine what you really value and what I believe you called it your objective function is on this planet, and how that is your single most important question of life. So can you explain a little bit, I guess, to give our listeners some context here, what your book is all about and what the mission is?
So if we talk about objective function, I mean, it's something that a lot of people are like, oh, I'm a nihilist. I don't believe anything has purpose. Therefore, I don't have an objective function. And it's like, no, you do. You have some set of internal heuristics you're using when you decide what presidential candidate to vote for, when you decide whether you want to go out at night to party or you want to stay in working to get ahead in your job. That set of heuristics, that fundamental set that says, this is what I do here and this is what I do here, that's your objective function.
It's the thing that you're trying to maximize. But a lot of people are trying to maximize something that maybe they don't value. Maybe it's just based on what other people say or do, and they feel like, okay, well, I guess that's what I'm supposed to do then. And what this book tries to guide people to do is find for themselves through those thought experiments, which are essentially, like a litmus test, whatever base judgment call they're going to make in terms of that thing that they want to value most and maximize most.
I love what you said recently about the thought experiments in the book and the object. So basically, it's like we're like, okay, here's all the potential things you could think have value in your life. And it's like a big buffet. But you're not just walking down this buffet. You're walking down this buffet next to a really pessimistic aunt who's like, ugh, you're not really going to have that, are you? You know why? You know you're gonna. Well, how did you say it?
Oh, well, that probably is salmonella. And did you know that if you eat those mushrooms raw, you're going to get cancer? And the cholesterol of those cheese puffs is just over the top.
You have an aunt like that too? Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh, God. But it's, I mean, and in the end, with these, the thing you want to maximize in life, that's a judgment call. But then the book proceeds to help you build basically the hypotheses you're going to build around how to maximize that judgment call, which we call ideologies. Now, those may be proven wrong and they'll change throughout your life as you basically get better evidence.
And then how to change yourself. And then how to control how other people see you. But I think the how to change yourself category, that's my favorite chapter of the book. Because, I used to be a neuroscientist. I've been published. I have an exhibit on display at the Smithsonian still. Like, I was like a legit neuroscientist. And it's something I'm still really passionate about. And I feel like people vastly underestimate how much control they have over who they are. And so often someone will get angry at something or someone will get jealous about something and they'll say, oh, I can't control that. That's just who I am. But you control who you are. You control that individual. And yes, it may require a bit of, knowledge, which hopefully we get across in the book, but you don't get to not take responsibility because you were a jerk.
Wow.
Amen.
I have so much to say all at once.
Stop talking. This is amazing. So something that I experienced as I read this was like, you kind of alluded to it just now, but I went through it almost going through this complete psychological transformation where in the beginning, before you even pick up this book, you have a pretty clear idea of who you are, what you believe, even though you don't really consciously think about that too much. And then you start in on it and you're like, oh, that's a really good point. Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm going to shift how I think about this. I'm going to shift how I think about this. And then you get almost to the end. You're like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I believe. I don't know what's real. I'm completely confused as to go about my life and go out into this world again. And so I'm curious what your experience is with people and what you tell people and kind of guide people to almost like reintegrate themselves into society after they experience this book. Because even like, I don't know, even today I'm like not watching the news. I'm watching my Facebook and I'm seeing things that are coming through news stations and I'm like, nope, I don't believe that anymore. It's just not, this doesn't matter. This, and you think about like the sources and you think about what emotions they're playing on and marketing and advertising. It just completely screwed with my mind in a beautiful way. But I'm now like on this other level of consciousness. Help me.
Wow. Well, it sounds like you're doing all the right things in the sense that now you actually are questioning things and not taking things for granted. And you're off what we would call autopilot, where you just kind of accept everything and go about doing things, acting as this character that's kind of implanted in you that isn't even you. I can say it's a really long process. You're not going to change overnight and you're not going to be optimally pursuing your values overnight either, no matter how far ahead you already are. Like, we're still constantly changing and tweaking and changing our minds when we get better evidence. But I can say, like, in the beginning, as you're experiencing, like when one starts to ask those really weird, like, base questions, and you may change some really fundamental elements of what you value, if you haven't, figured it out yet, or if you are changing things. I mean, for me, at least, it was huge. I mean, I changed everything. I used to, for example, go to work every day wearing some new crazy outfit. One day it would be Japanese street fashion outfit I purchased in Harajuku. And then the next day it would be a vintage German dirndl. And then the next day it would be red fishnet stockings with a leather jacket. I mean, it was all over the place and I loved it and I got a lot of attention for it. And then when Malcolm had me actually ask myself, what do I value? What do I want to achieve in life? And then how do I achieve it? I realized, okay, well, success in career is something that's really being important to me. I need to be successful in my career. I need to be listened to. I need to be taken seriously. And the outfits I wore didn't exactly help me with that. And we went through basically Google images of famous businesswomen and successful businesswomen and came up with these different outfit schemas that might better serve my goals. And Malcolm at first wanted me to wear he wanted me to wear
I was wrong.
blazers.
You're making fun of me. No.
Oh no. What did we do?
Ladies, shoulder pads. It's not 1985 anymore.
And then she did her study with all of the LinkedIn things of all these successful women.
And in the end, I ended up changing my outfit to all black business friendly clothing that could be either, informal or formal pretty much anywhere. It's very versatile, and just with that one changed my appearance. And I made many more based on subsequent findings and studies and everything else. Everything changed. I got a promotion in work from social media manager, like the sort of the lowest role at my company, to director of marketing. I got invited to speak at South by Southwest. People who knew me before and left the company I worked at, who then heard what I was doing and what role I had, were like, no, you're not. And they were right, because the person that I was presenting before was not someone who would get a role like that, who would get respect or be listened to or taken seriously.
Hold on, but I love the other changes you made. So she looked up competence perception in women under like Google Scholar for scientific studies. And then she cut her hair and started working because she thought statistically women who did that were seen as more competent.
Well, so if you have long hair, as a man or woman, by the way, it goes for both genders. People will see you as more attractive and agreeable, and they'll be more likely to want to talk to you and engage with you, but they'll also see you as less competent. So the more you look like a man from behind, essentially, the more competent people think you will be. So I felt like I really won this last Christmas when like a waiter came up to me and was like, "Sir, how can I?" And he was so
Thank you.
And I was like, oh my God, I'm so happy. And he was so confused. And then glasses are the same. You seem less approachable, but you're also seen as more intelligent.
You're such a weirdo, Simone. Can you just
what I'm saying though is it's when you actually look at what you value and then you start thinking really systematically about, okay, what can I tweak about, little things in my life that will help me more efficiently achieve this? It's amazing what changes, and it's so stupid because we all think, people are going to get who I am on the inside and respect me, and my actions speak louder than my appearance. But that is bullshit. It is not at all true. And as soon as you start realizing that and making the right tweaks, it's amazing what you can do.
Wow. It's really about bringing intention to the choices that you're making and having that tie to what you believe in and what you value. It makes so much sense. And I think though, especially what I was experiencing as I read this book, it was like, it starts to bring up all these things of like, oh my goodness, like maybe I don't know who I am. Maybe I don't. Maybe all these stories that I've said about myself actually aren't true, or they don't need to be true, and that they've been influenced by some outside source instead of from within. And that can be really scary to the ego at first, right? It's like, oh my God, if I don't know who I am. And yet what incredible, like that is actually true freedom, because when you get to create who you are, it's not as easy, right? It's a lot easier to have somebody tell you who you are. But the freedom that comes from being able to recreate who you are at any given moment, that is so powerful. And I think it's what really, we feel really aligned, because as, coaches, whether it be before in our past life as fitness coaches or as productivity coaches or whatever it is, business coaches, people are always like, okay, what is the best way to do this? What's the best way to do this? What should I do here? And our answer is always, it's whatever's going to work for you and excites you. Mm-hmm. And that can be really frustrating for people because they just want us to tell them, right? They just want to know the answer. But if you're willing to do that, a little bit of uncomfortable inner work to figure out what the answers are for you, wow, life actually becomes easier and more free after. So can you share with us a little bit about your take on personal development? Because I think it's really interesting, and the model that you've set up for your book, your foundation, and even in the book structure itself in terms of the way that you offer this is a guide instead of a here's what to do. So can you talk more about that?
We really try and not lead people towards specific answers, right? I mean, there's answers that we identify maybe strongly with personally, and there's answers that we think most people will come to if they actually think through it, that our society doesn't come to. And one of the answers that we think most people will come to if they actually think through it that society doesn't come to is that you're responsible for who you are. And that so much of the self-help or guides or, these get-rich-quick books or whatever they are meant to allow you to be happy with who you've allowed yourself to become. They encourage you to be like, oh, I mean, yeah, you're kind of a failure, and yeah, you're kind of a jerk to the people who care about you, but you should learn to love that person. And I think that when you really think through it, you realize, no, you shouldn't learn to love that person. You should learn to be somebody who you want to love, and you can change who you are. You talk about fitness instruction, and it's very much like, the Hayes movement. Do you know the Hayes movement?
No.
The Hayes movement is the healthy at every size movement. They're fat activists, and they believe that it is insulting to women of size that anyone would ever recommend that they become more fit, because they don't understand that this is who they really are. And I think that there's something of a Hayes movement of personality. When you suggest somebody, well, you don't have to be a jerk to people who are nice to you. You don't have to be okay with your current state in the world. You can say, I want to be better, and I'm going to try to be better, and here is my systematic plan for becoming who I want to be, and be more proud of that person than who you were before. And that's not politically offensive or anything. But it is politically offensive. And so we just push people to, I guess, make those decisions.
Got it. Yeah.
Whoa.
And can you? Sorry. I was wondering if you could tell us about the foundation that you created.
So the foundation is, I don't know, part of me says it's something of a pipe dream for us, but it's what we think is the biggest problem in society today, which is that changing your mind is frowned upon. If somebody comes to you and says, here's a systematic argument and evidence, and it's the type of evidence that you value as a person, and then you change your mind to believe what they believe, you're the loser. You're the pathetic one. You haven't humbled them by saying, oh, you presented evidence that I'm wrong, and I'm willing to do this hugely enormous, difficult thing that most humans do like 3 times in their entire lifespan. No, you're the loser because you changed your mind based on evidence.
You're accused of being a flip-flopper.
Oh, yes, or a flip-flopper, if you're a politician, which is even worse, that politicians can't change their mind.
Oh my God, yeah, when presented with better evidence, how terrifying is that?
And what we're trying to do is put the money towards this and put a lot of the extra money we make towards this foundation, and we hope to run after school programs and stuff like that. Like, I don't think we can really fix it with adults. Maybe Simone is more optimistic than I do, but we want to change it at a young age. Run after school programs with kids, or we say, okay, what's some like political thing you believe very strongly in? Like, let's say gun control, right? So you have a certain stance on this. What evidence would you need to change that position? And then you say, okay, so you would need this amount of this kind of evidence from these kinds of sources. Have you looked for that evidence before? Have you actively sought out that evidence? And I think the one thing we really want to do is not guide people to any specific answer, but really shame people when they say there is no amount of evidence that could make me change what I believe on this subject. Because, I'm okay with that if it's like a religious thing or like a fundamental value thing. But when it's like an evidence-based, like, I think that capitalism is the best form of government, you should be able to be able to have that be disproved. Or I think communism is the best form of government, right? But in our society, it is considered almost honorable to say, I believe this thing and nothing can dissuade me.
Well, or maybe some people are making ideologies their objective functions, which seems to be really misguided from you. Like, I'm going to fight for liberalism. I'm going to fight for communism or the,
Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Like, that's my purpose in life.
And that's, to me, I feel like if anyone really questioned themselves and asked these questions that we ask in the book, and they would decide that that's not really what they're into.
For sure. Whoa. So what I feel like this is we're almost playing in the Matrix, right? And it's like the strategies that you describe in the book, it's almost as if you're guiding people to create a reality, as you did with changing the way that you dress and your hair and wearing glasses, to like you're at level 2. We're playing in the Matrix. We're at level 2, and most of society is still at level 1. Right? So it's almost like we're just doing the little things that help us to almost persuade the people in level 1 that we are this thing, so that they see us as this thing that we already see ourselves as. And what really came to mind for me was, I almost see this as like a tier of, this is anybody who understands what you're describing and reading this book and at that heightened level of awareness. So there's like a small percentage of these people, and then there's 90% of the population. And then I feel like there is a small percentage of people who understand this, but from a different and more dangerous perspective. So, you said there's like government, right? Gun control. And there's all of those conspiracy theories where they understand that they can control, like media can be controlled, right? And so there's that heightened reality in the same way, where they also can play off of the people who are understanding life at this certain level. They play off the values that they think they believe. They play off of, whatever it is, to persuade 90% of the population that these things are true, that this is the right way to do things, that this is what you should be thinking. So to educate that group of people and slowly but surely bring them into this awareness, I think is going to be a really beautiful and powerful way to start to kind of counteract what's going on at that really high, sort of dangerous level. And I know this is like a black hole, and I don't know how deep we want to get there, but it came to mind for sure.
But I love the way you described this, level 1 versus level 2. And the interesting thing about level 1 versus level 2 is they've got different score mechanisms and different win mechanisms. You win level 1 when you convince other people to see you the way you see yourself. When you convince the maximum number of other people in this world to think of you the way you think of yourself. And you win level 2 when you say, this is what I want to achieve in life, and here's how I'm going. This is the thing I'm trying to maximize. But, one of the things that really motivated us to do this was actually all this news about, Russian hacking attacks, et cetera. But they're not hacking attacks. They're meme attacks. They're like low-level memes. By sharing them, you feel more like you align with who you want yourself to be and who you want the world to be. And that by attacking that worldview, the more people we can move to level 2, the better the world will be. Right. What do you think, Simone?
Well, yeah, companies like Cambridge Analytica, which I think are brilliant. I have such deep admiration for what they did, is they find what basically autopilot people are driven by, and they utilize exactly the right wavelengths to get them to do what they want. And I mean, how awesome is that, right? And if you have an objective function that you really believe in, and you are that clever
to hijack a bunch of other people, turn them into zombies,
they deserved to win. I mean, this is probably not what everyone would think, but I think they totally deserved everything that they got because they rocked it. But I agree. And to me also, I mean, there's another way to look at the Matrix analogy. Even though we're in level 2, we're still in the Matrix. And we may have these moments where we wake up and we realize we're outside the Matrix, but the vast majority of our time, we're in the Matrix, we're on some form of autopilot, and we're to a great extent out of control of our own selves. And we talk in the book sometimes about moments of lucidity, these moments where like we maybe are now, consciously thinking about things that we do and do not believe, consciously thinking about the future, what's good for me, what's not good for me, what should I be doing? But the vast majority of the time, we are just running on a basic model of ourselves and what we think that person should be doing, plus our emotions. I'm hungry, tired, whatever. And it scares me how out of control we are of ourselves and how much organizations like those that we've been talking about here are able to tap into that and control us.
Right.
Wow. Yeah. When you talk about the moments of lucidity, I think my mom would think that when in my junior year of high school, I went off to a little summer art program in LA, and I came back with as a vegetarian with my nose pierced and pink hair, and it was because I was immersed all of a sudden, surrounded by people that thought in a different way, that opened my eyes to a new way of thinking, of looking at the world, of dressing, and all of that. And so there are these times in our lives where perhaps we get exposed to new concepts. Maybe people listening to this right now are like, wow, maybe I should think about how I dress or what I really think or what I really believe. But you talk about, I think you called them, they're like periods of audit, right? Where you somehow, and I'm sure
flux
travel.
period.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Flux periods. Right. So whether you travel or whatever it is, and sometimes they happen in our lives. Like we get sent off to art summer school, or we can create them ourselves. And you talk about sort of short and longer periods of flux that you can kind of create in your life in order to really tap into this. I think you called them the sabbatical and the localized reboot. Is that right?
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Well, the difference between the sabbatical and the localized reboot is, so when we talk about flux periods, you can't just change who you are. You can't just change your personality, but you can change your personality. You can't just do it randomly, right?
You can't just wake up and say, okay, this Thursday, I'm going to be Simone.
It needs to be combined with certain events in your life.
Yes.
And it can, the normal way to do it is like a trip or moving or something like that.
Right. Like classically, for example, when people want to try to quit smoking, they might go to another country for 1 or 2 months just because it breaks their habits.
But not everyone can afford that. And so the localized reboot is trying to like trick your body into entering a flux period, or not your body, but your brain, even though you haven't left your city and you haven't left your job. You're just sort of tricking yourself into thinking, oh, I'm a new person now. But there's times in your life when it's very easy to rewrite who you are. When you first start college, when you first have a kid, when you first start a new job, in that environment, you're sort of deciding, okay, I get to be a new person now. What type of person am I going to be?
And you are literally changing your identity. You're going from the high school student who knows everyone in their small town to the wide-eyed college freshman, and
you're
every
changing
time
the emotions you feel in response to certain stimuli.
Yeah, and those are the periods, and this is something that behavioral economists who try to, if working for the government and trying to get people to make the right decisions and choices, that's when they like to put in changes and interventions in people's lives because they know that it'll make a difference. But the interesting thing is only these first-time changes make a difference. For example, there was one study where they found that an intervention regarding parenting only worked on first-time mothers and fathers and not second-time mothers and fathers because they'd already built that image of themselves.
That part of their identity.
The parent identity. So with flux periods, you can't just like always go to the same cabin in the woods to reinvent yourself. You really have to go somewhere new to create an entirely new identity.
And some of this so totally new to you that your body's like, okay, I'm okay with reinventing myself now.
Yeah.
And have you guys kind of boiled this down into certain variables that need to exist in each of these environments to maximize that reinvention?
We don't know yet. I would like to do research on it. That's one thing I would like the foundation to do is do systematic research on this stuff. There really hasn't been any. It would be cool if we could.
Yeah, because then you could be like, oh, this is like an ideal place to reinvent yourself for a first timer, like that would be a really cool list because I would hit them all.
Oh gosh, and it's something we've discussed. We actually run this multinational travel business called Travel Max that builds travel packages for people and helps companies manage travel, and it's also a wholesaler. And we were like, oh my God, we now have like the perfect tool, right? Like we could create reinvention packages if we knew exactly the right elements, right? Like, so we could say, okay, you're a person XYZ living in place W. Okay, well, we need to move you to one of these regions. This kind of package and this duration will, get you there. What's your budget? Okay, we'll make it work for you. But we just don't have enough data yet, which frustrates us because now we actually have this amazing resource of this company.
Yeah, I mean, clarification. I mean, we're not like we're not like normal or moderate success level entrepreneurs. So we talk about the company that we're running right now. We do well over $100 million a year in sales. But if your listeners want to reach out to us about doing a trip or something like that, and are like, look, I want a trip that I think could maximize this. We have some hypotheses about how this might work, but we don't know yet. So just email us at ceo@travelmax.com.
Yeah, we've talked actually with a couple people about this. We're working with one person on a yacht-based trip to do this. But I mean, like, that only works for some budget levels. So yeah, anyone who's interested in experimenting, maybe we can start our studies now.
I was going to say, that's
awesome.
A really fun way to collect data. I'm sure you'd have lots of people willing to be guinea pigs for that experiment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit more about this Travel Max company?
Well, yeah. So basically, Malcolm and I know that per our objective functions, we basically need to be financially stable and independent at some point so that we can just, pursue research and fund our foundation in the future without having to worry about, rent and health insurance. So one of our hypotheses is, okay, become financially independent. And so half of our life is, okay, build a career that makes us a lot of money. We tried entrepreneurship, like starting something from the ground up. We tried venture capital, which, we loved. It wasn't really our thing. And so we eventually entered the model of what's called entrepreneurship through acquisition, where you can either self-fund or do what we did, where we raised money from a group of investors and
we begged rich people to give us money to buy a company.
There was a lot of
the real way to put it.
Desperate begging. And then we spent a year basically also begging, then in this case, business owners across the United States to sell their successful businesses to us with the idea that they'd retire, we would take their place and, with our investors' money, acquire the business and then make it grow and eventually exit and make enough money to hopefully allow us to then focus on our foundation and doing research and everything else. And the company we eventually found was Travel Max. It was just this gem of a company that basically, because it's a wholesaler of travel, in addition to a corporate travel agency and leisure travel agency, it's able to provide white glove concierge services to travelers directly without charging them the normal fees that those companies charge, because it makes money based like on volume through the wholesale business. So we were really impressed by this because before we didn't know travel agencies existed. We're like, what kind of monster doesn't book all their travel online? And so, yeah.
And then they were like, oh, it's so much cheaper to book it with us. And we're like, what?
Yeah, it was very humbling. We had no idea. Like, we learned so much about the travel industry, and this business is based in Miami and Peru. I hadn't spoken Spanish in 10 years. We'd never been to Peru before.
I haven't spoken Spanish in 30 years.
Yeah.
I'm 30 years old.
And here we are now, like, running this company I'm speaking Spanish half the time now. We'd never worked in the travel industry before. This is a massive adventure. I mean, life is really weird. But again, like, I think when you have an objective function and you know what you need and what you believe you need to do to achieve that, it can get you through so much. It can get us through begging investors for money to search for a company,
it gives you
begging people to sell us a business. It can get us through the terrifying process of acquiring it and trying to figure out what we're doing.
Lucidity and how you approach your goals. You don't do this stupid, I want to be rich. Well, I guess entrepreneurs are rich. Well, what does an entrepreneur look like? And then you end up in some MLM scam or something, right? It's more like, okay, I want to be running a company of X size within X many years. What are all the ways I could get there? And one of the ways could be to grow it from scratch. Another way could be to buy it. Okay, how do I buy that company? Okay, what specific metrics do I need to convince people to give me the money I need to buy that company?
And there's so many options. Like, but in our search, we came across all these other sorts of people doing things slightly similar to us. Like a bunch of people, for example, without being tied up with investors, which we can say gets really complicated and often very intimidating and scary. people are using small business administration loans to get enough money combined with whatever savings they can scrape together or debt to acquire businesses and then run them on their own and make a lot of money. We came across so many inspiring couples and individuals who were doing things like this, and we're just floored by the options.
Wow. Very cool. So are there any habits or opportunities throughout the day or the week that you use to check back in with what your objective function is? Is this just something that's sort of coursing through your brain and your blood at all times? Or do you have any sort of inner checks, either with yourselves as individuals or with each other, where you kind of check in to make sure that you're still, on track?
I think once you really find your objective function, it's so obvious and so clear that there's no way you'll ever forget it.
But we do sometimes do audits. Like we'll do we'll have worked on something for months and I'll be like, is there some crazy idea, some crazy way of achieving what I want to achieve that I haven't thought of?
Yeah, and when it comes down to the tactics, of where are we with X and Y and Z project, way deep down into the, the project-based elements of our initiatives. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I would say if you're just trying to be rich, if that's the first part of your objective function, I can help your listeners with that pretty easily. Stop focusing on sexy things. Focus on unsexy things that don't require third-party support. When the person who I met recently, who I was like, this person is the most likely person to become super wealthy that I've met recently, he was doing Christmas lights for people's houses in Dallas in the winter. And they put up these big Christmas displays, and he had hired a bunch of immigrant laborers and had all Christmas displays and everything like that. And I was like, this isn't something he bought from someone else. This isn't something he got out of a box. This is something where he said, I see people spending a lot of money on this, and I bet I can get them to put part of that money to me.
Yeah, and have lower costs. It was brilliant. But also when it comes to just generally staying on track with your objective function, which I don't think, again, once you know that core thing you value above all else, it's so clear. But finding the right way to maximize it gets super confusing. So one heuristic we've built that's been incredibly useful is to build an attraction to the feeling of offense. That when you feel offended or threatened or emotional, that's a success case because it means that you're close to something that could possibly give you new evidence and make you a better person. So when we're threatened or offended by something, it's because both that thing threatens our current ideology set, the current beliefs or self-image that we have, and it has some weight to it. Because if it didn't, we wouldn't feel emotionally aroused by it, right? We just kind of brush it off. And we found that that's such an effective way to learn new things that really do possibly change us for the better. Because usually you just completely shut it down. And that's some of the most important stuff. I mean, even if you think something's very offensive or very wrong, don't you want to know if it's actually right? Because then you're really, really off.
Hell yeah. That's brilliant. That is a brilliant way to think about it, and a great reframe for, getting in those emotional states rather than sitting in it and getting all frustrated, thinking about it in terms of an opportunity. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it changes things. And it's not an easy habit to build, but I think after a couple of wins where you realize how much better off you are from just hearing out a view that scared you, it becomes fairly easy to keep doing it.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, you guys, I literally could listen to you guys talk forever, to each other, to us, to someone else. I don't want to turn this off, but at some point, we're going to have to help our listeners to find you in other ways. So if someone is interested in reading your book or perhaps some travel through you folks, what are some great ways to connect with you and seek out your services?
We always encourage anyone who wants to chat with us to email us directly. If you want to reach us with regard to travel stuff and you need any help with getting somewhere or building a trip and having basically other people, a team of concierges, comparison shop for you and figure everything out, email CEO@travelmax.com. or visit travelmax.com or book.travelmax.com and just submit all your details in the form that we provide. If you want to talk with us about pragmatism, email hello@pragmatist.guide. And pragmatist.guide is also our website with various forms. For example, a form where if you fill it out, we'll share a free copy with a friend so that you can read the book with a buddy, because honestly, reading it alone can be kind of tough.
I think you have to either email us to get the free book first or do the 99 cents buy on Amazon first.
No, you just have to fill out the form and it gets automatically emailed.
The form isn't available on the site anymore.
You took it off?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you have to find the URL in our book. Okay, well, that means you just have to buy it. And you can find the book by searching The Pragmatist Guide to Life on Amazon.com.
But 99 cents, I don't think is that much of a burden. But if they don't that, they can just email.
Yes.
Yes, wonderful. Yeah, we do recommend reading it with a friend. Just to, it's
necessary.
Yeah, and it is kind of a, as we said, not a light read, but such a powerful read, so important. It will really change your entire life. So this has been a treat. We are so, and I think when you read a book, you get an idea of a person, the people that are behind the book. But wow, you guys are so animated and so fun. And so it's been just such an incredible added experience to be able to talk with you and interact with you in this way. So thank you so much for your time. And we will be sure to include all of the show notes in this episode and send people your way. And we look forward to staying connected with you guys because we just think you're awesome.
Oh, likewise. After hearing so many of your podcasts, it's crazy to be talking with you live, and it's been a complete blast.
Awesome.
Yay. Thank you guys so much.
We hope you enjoyed this episode with Malcolm and Simone. We sure enjoyed our conversation. And if you would like to find out more about them, you can check out the show notes. You can check out pragmatist.guide to get your hands on their book. And as they said, get your hands on the book. Share it with a friend. You can come into our Facebook group and talk about it there as you begin to explore all of these questions about who you are. So you can find that at bit.ly/BLE tribe. And if you're interested in our course, Broke Ass to Badass, that we talked about, you can find out all about that at bestlifeever.buzz/B2B.